and welcome to the Canada School of Public Service. My name is John Medcoff. I'm the lead faculty here at the school, and I'm happy to be your host for today's session. We are here for the latest installment of the CSPS Tech Demo Series. If this is your first time watching, this video series showcases through practical demonstrations innovative technologies developed by Canadian companies, highlighting how emerging tools like data and artificial intelligence can support new approaches to public service work and to service delivery. And I'm delighted to be joined for today's session by Daniel Escott, who's the Chief Executive Officer at Formic AI. Daniel's going to give us a demonstration today of an AI platform that is designed and built by his company and specifically for the realities of regulated professions. So Daniel, welcome to the Tech Demo Series, and maybe I'll invite you to start by introducing yourself and perhaps telling us a little bit about Formic AI and the product that you're going to demonstrate today.
John, thank you for having me. It's good to be here. My name is Daniel. I am the CEO of Formic AI. I am a lawyer based in Ontario. I live in Toronto, originally from Newfoundland, so you might hear a bit of my accent come out. But I'll try and keep it intelligible as much as I possibly can. Formic started about 4.5 years ago on a mission to make AI trustworthy, which sounds ambitious, and it is. The product of that research over the last 4.5 years has been a new architecture for artificial intelligence that effectively removes information retrieval from generation. And what that really means is we're using large language models for what they're good at, semantic understanding, grammar, syntax, but not information retrieval. It was never really built for that in the first place. So instead of trying to shoehorn it into doing everything, we figured, why don't we just build a system that does that better and plug the LLM into what it does best? And the result of that was an ability to completely eliminate hallucinations. We can provide citations to source material across any size of a database. The citations cannot be hallucinated. And we can guarantee that in our responses, it will never be able to invent information, and it will not just give you what it believes to be the most probable answer. And the easiest way that I can describe that is the ability to prove a negative. AI generally, if it cannot find what it believes to be the most accurate answer, it will just make one up because it's working on probability at the end of the day. Our system works on absolute certainty. So if it cannot find what it definitively believes to be the correct answer to your question, based on the information it has available to it in your database, then it will just say, I can't find that for you. I'm sorry. And that one change completely alters the nature of artificial intelligence as we know it. And that's what I'm excited to show you today.
Excellent. No, I really see a lot of applicability to that in our public service context. So why don't you call up your screen and maybe walk us through the demo so we can get a sense of how the platform works?
Absolutely. So I'll share my screen now. Let me know when it pops up for you. There we go.
Yeah, I can see it. And maybe start by walking me through what it is that I'm looking at here.
So what we're looking at right now is what we call the Formic engine. This is, at least for now, our homepage. And we have it loaded right now with a whole bunch of test documents. This is our internal server right now. I have documents from federal court decisions. I have patent applications, ISO standards, labor board documentation, tax returns, a little bit of a hodgepodge of everything. And this was just to get an idea of what a representative sample of a diverse data set looks like. It's not just legal stuff. It's not just tax stuff. It's not just policy. It's a little bit of everything, because that's in the nature of the public service and my own experience with it. That's what we work with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to show first and foremost is just how we get everything in here. When we upload documents, the first thing that we do is we scrape everything. We do not import any metadata. We don't try and figure out what we need to reconcile between the information on the file and the information in the database. We populate all of our own metadata based on the system that we developed, and we also summarize the contents of each file when we ingest it. And that's really to avoid my own pet peeve with LLMs, which is if you give the same document to ChatGPT that I give to Microsoft Copilot, and we ask it the exact same thing, it'll give us two completely different answers. This at least guarantees that everyone on this system sees the exact same information, whether you're looking at it today or in 20 years. When we have everything into the database, you can see we have the individual files here. The summary that I just mentioned pops up right here. And you see these highlighted tabs. We call them tags, but this is the metadata that we populate. We have a standard metadata scheme that we developed that can be modified for any kind of domain or organization or use case. But this is a metadata scheme that we had developed for a client of ours that's a law firm in Ontario. So we display the language of the document with the type of document based on parameters that we set, what areas of law it might be relevant to, but this could be anything. It could be engineering specs, it could be legislation, it could be policies, it could be internal documents. All of this is done dynamically. And we also populate on an individual file level the key terms, phrases, and concepts that appear on a regular basis in that document, both so we can find it, but also so we can find other similar documents that discuss the same thing. Now everything is in the database. There's only really two ways to interact with this data. The first is to query against everything. So everyone in your organization would have access to a shared database, whether that's something like GC Docs, or it could be as specific as just a folder of documents that your specific team is working with. But if I were to run a query here like public policy on artificial intelligence, topical, the first thing that's going to come up very shortly is our non-generative search results. These are ranked search results, good old-fashioned, old-school Google style, where we identify all of the relevant sources in every document in the database. It's not it's roughly 80% accurate. It's not these are the most likely to be relevant. This is everything in the database, and we show you exactly what in each of those documents is relevant. And that's true of
each of these lines I'm seeing now then is an item from the database that I can explore further. Is that the idea?
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Because the idea is we're not trying to let the AI decide what's relevant for you. If you're working with this kind of information in this kind of setting, you're probably trustworthy enough to figure out for yourself what's most relevant to what you're looking for. Our job is just to find it for you and present it in a way that cuts out all of the time scrolling through 100-page PDFs looking for two different keywords.
Okay.
The next thing that comes up in this search is our briefs, and these are AI generated. We have our short brief, which is more of I call it a quick and dirty, give me a file and 2 or 3 sentences to explain why it's relevant, file name, 2 or 3 reasons why it's relevant. But you'll see here, we have a lot of highlighted footnotes. And this is something that was proprietary to our system that we spent a solid 3 years developing. These hyperlinked citations link to the document, the page number of the information that's being cited, and the specific text that's being cited. And these citations are not AI generated because we were able to completely remove information retrieval from generation, which means completely separate from the hallucination proof of the response. These citations are the original source material for each part of the response. So we see here.
That's really interesting. Can I maybe just pause there?
Absolutely.
So this brief, the summary itself is generated by AI, but those links to the original source document will take me to the document itself and not an AI generation of it. Am I understanding
That's exactly
that
right.
correctly? Okay.
And we wanted to make sure that we're not just saying, here's all of the places that we found this information, like what ChatGPT or Copilot does, have fun looking for the actual content. So we built it in a way where it's on a paragraph level. We can get more granular, but we found that paragraph makes it a lot more palatable for users. So these 14 citations were used to build this paragraph. These 3 citations were used to build this paragraph, but not the first paragraph, and so on and so
Okay.
forth. So we can very deterministically link this part of the response came from these 14 sources and only these 14 sources. We also
And why is
offer,
that important? Why is that important for from a client perspective?
if for nothing else, it's important for auditability and explainability.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues that I've seen, not just in law, but in every sector that we've deployed this technology in so far, the biggest piece of feedback outside of hallucinations is the ability to understand why you're getting the answer you did. What did the AI consider when it's giving you a 37-page report? Where did it come from? Are these actual sources, or did it just make any of this up? This was our way of safeguarding against it. So the ability to not just present the information and the citations, but to be able to cross-reference that with the source material in real time adds a layer of trust that
Yeah,
AI in its current form is just incapable of.
that's great. Thank you.
And just to close the loop on our briefs, we also offer a longer version that's more of a thematic engagement with the contents of these files. But this is more of an exhaustive explanation of everything in the search results and why it's relevant. So where the short brief is just a here's what you're looking for and here's where to find it, the long brief is a thorough and exhaustive answer to your question, whatever it is. The other
And I
way to
scroll back and forth between those two just by pressing the short or long tabs I see in the center of the screen there.
that's exactly right.
Okay.
And the only other way to interact with this data is to put information into a project. And we can get there by loading a search result in there, or we can just open a brand new one and start loading files into it. But I've taken that long brief and opened up a project with it, and we see the query and the search result are the first things to come in. But all of the documents that have been cited with 158 citations in this result are now a part of this project folder.
Okay.
When we run our report, what we're going to see at the very top of this is a high-level summary of the entirety of the contents of this folder. So we have one paragraph that succinctly explains the connected themes and tissues of all of these documents that are loaded in. And each of these files has a context-aware summary that we created for this document when we first ingested it. So for something like an academic document, like the Sedona Canada Primer, we have more of an academic abstract. But if we were to move over to something like a federal court decision, we have a whole legal research memo. And once again, if we move over to something like a patent application, we break out all of the key information on the patent. And all of that is context awareness from our system. When we identify what type of document it is, that dictates what the most important information is going to be in that document, and we pull all of that out when we first receive it. So
Okay,
you
so
could go in
on the
now and look
right-hand
at
side of my
this.
screen here, I'm getting a summary of every one of those documents, but then I can go in and look at each one individually. Is that it?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And all of these summaries, as well as the conversation that we'll jump to in a second, are all backed by these same citations. So if I just want to cross-reference just the summary for this patent application, I can start jumping back and forth. And you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, we're in the document right now. And as I navigate through these citations, we're jumping not just to the page that's being referenced, but it's actually highlighting the specific text that the AI is referencing here.
Interesting. Wow.
And if we were to jump over to the conversation and start doing the exact same thing with our long brief response, if I were to start cross-referencing, this first point with need for clearer regulations, it's going to jump to each document that's being cited. It'll show me what exactly is being cited for each paragraph. And all of this is being done dynamically in real time. So all of these citations are unique to this one response. And when I ask a second question in a moment, we'll get another response with completely different citations. So if I wanted to zero in on, what does the federal court say about AI, because we do have, I believe, two federal court decisions and a report from a federal court judge in here. This is going to exhaustively comb through the contents of this entire folder. It'll come back with a couple paragraphs explaining what is in this folder that's relevant, why is it relevant, and with those citations, it'll show me exactly where I can find that. And the last thing that we can close with is, once we get this response, I'm curious to try and prove the negative, as I mentioned earlier. So I'd like to run one last query just to see what that would look like in this context and show everyone that we are in fact able to prove that something doesn't exist.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really curious to see that part of the activity or that part of the demonstration. So on the right-hand side there now, I see the search has finished. So it has identified the sources to your more specific query.
That's exactly right. And you'll see we've started at number 1 again because all of the citations are unique to each response. But it's showing me in real time, here's what I found, here's why it's relevant to what you're looking for, but most importantly, where is it in your source documents? And that I found to be most important in contexts that are relevant to the public service. Because at the end of the day, it's not sufficient in most use cases to just find what you believe to be the right answer. You have to be able to show where in the policy document or where in the legislation or where in your internal documents you're finding that information and why is it relevant. And a lot of that right now is just done either through institutional knowledge and people who've been around the block a lot, or you're doing some sort of fancy keyword search, or in some cases a Boolean search, and you have to go through and audit all of these results yourself. This was
I can see
designed.
where if I'm trying to determine from where I, for instance, have obtained a specific authority, having a summary of the authority is one thing, but being able to go in and actually see the specific paragraph without having to do the combing through of a large piece of legislation myself, I would see as being highly applicable.
Exactly, because I mean, you see here the study leave report that we're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen is 149 pages. For me to try and find all of the reference material in this myself, that's going to be a solid hour of reading, and I'm a fast reader. But here, not only do I have access to all of that information, but I can interact with it in real time and dynamically. Now, to close by return, if I were to ask, what does the United States executive branch think about AI?
And you're
I
guessing that there will not be a response to this particular question in the data set. Is that it?
I would be very, very surprised. Um, I will admit I had a meeting with the team at the Canada Revenue Agency 2 weeks ago, and the system actually proved me wrong.
Okay.
Which is quite fun because that's the nature of this. It's not trying to do work for you. It's trying to make doing your work faster and easier. Because all of this time spent just looking for information is not time adding value or performing actual tasks. It's the legwork that has to be done. My God, I was wrong indeed. Uh, I was. I'll admit I was wrong. But just to close my thought, the whole idea is that all of this time not working, just finding the Lego blocks of what I need to be able to actually do my job, we don't need to waste that time anymore. It's work that no one likes doing. It's usually very difficult to do well, and this allows us to do that work in a way that AI is being used ethically and responsibly. It's secure. It can be deployed on cloud or on premise. But at the end of the day, it's not trying to replace anyone. It's trying to make everyone's lives easier.
So it's an enhancement of a human capacity as opposed to a full replacement, although I can see it saving us a lot of time. Now, in this example you've provided, turns out there was
It turns out there
at least
was.
one
I was
source
wrong.
that responded to your query. But if I understood your point from your introduction clearly, if you were to ask it something to which it did not have an answer, rather than trying to invent one, it would just give you the transparent response that nothing has been found. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. I want to try maybe one quick thing,
Yeah.
asking what can artificial intelligence replace Canadian workers? I'm curious to see what the response on this is going to be because, at the very least, this requires a level of analysis that I don't think would be in these documents. But again, I stand to be proven wrong. Um, but all of this is to say we are trying to provide access to this kind of technology in responsible forums in ways that actually add value without creating more risk. I don't think we need to sell what the value of AI is at scale. We need to sell ways to access that value without jeopardizing people's rights, people's privacy, people's security. See, there we go. The
Here we
provided
go.
documents do not directly state whether artificial intelligence can replace Canadian workers. However, it's provided a source here that discusses a much more abstract level, and it explains what it says, why it's relevant, and once again, where I can find it. We've proven the negative, and I suppose
Okay.
what I didn't anticipate is it actually showed me where I could find related material anyway.
Okay. That is very interesting. Now, you have mentioned that you're a lawyer by background and that you've done work with different kinds of organizations. Are there specific sectors that you're sort of envisioning as the ones where this kind of tool would be particularly relevant or helpful, and why?
Well, John, it's a great question. Um, the first place that I wanted to start was obviously law, because hallucinations, explainability, security are all highly prized in the legal sector. But what we found is that areas like accounting, banking, finance, policy, national security, even heritage to a certain extent, all have an element of, for lack of better phrasing, if the AI system that we're using makes something up, or we can't find where it came up with this information, bad things happen. It's not a scenario where if ChatGPT writes your newsletter and it types someone's name wrong, you fix the newsletter and you move on with your life. But these are areas where decisions are made every day, funds are being deployed, and they have consequences in the real world that affect thousands or millions of people. So we can't afford the kind of risk that traditional AI, which sounds weird to say only 5 years out, but
Yes.
these are the areas where bad things do in fact happen when AI inevitably messes up. So we wanted to have a specialist alternative where the parameters that affect these people can be directly addressed and mitigated. It's not an afterthought, it's not an add on, it is at the very core of the architecture that this technology is built on. And that's what I think our public service needs.
Okay, so that sort of trust and confidence in the validity of the information and being able to go directly to the source, as you said at the beginning, leveraging the best of what AI can do, but not asking it to do the things where other formats or other technologies might be better suited to the role.
That's exactly it.
And maybe one last question for you, Daniel. Um, with the organizations you're working with now, is this something that that platform or that interface would appear on the desktop of every employee in the company? Is this something that is designed sort of for everybody to be accessing the data that is relevant to them? Is it really sort of people in specific roles in the organization? Is it sort of general use or specified use within a company or an organization?
We found that the value of this technology scales exponentially the more data you have and the more people that need to access it. So our best practices that we would typically deploy, if we're deploying in cloud, it would be accessible through a website. If it's deployed on premise or on a local network environment, it would be accessible either through the network environment or the desktop itself. But in either scenario, we try and go as broad as possible, and we try and include as much data as possible, because the system is not trying to cater to a specific audience or bias towards certain use cases. I call it a digital librarian. It's at the simplest, most abstract level, an interface for you to come to and say, I am looking for this information. Is this information here? And if so, where can I find it? And it'll go back in the stacks, it'll comb through everything, and it might come back and say, you know what? There's nothing here about that, and I can't provide any of that information for you. But it might also come back with a stack of books and say, here's exactly what you're looking for. Here's the pages that you'll find all of this in each document. And if you have any other questions about it, let me know. It's not doing your work for you. It's not filing your taxes. It's not providing legal advice, but it'll certainly take all of that legwork going through the digital stack, so to speak, and put all of that in one digestible format for you.
That is a great summary. Thank you very much. And maybe before I close, any final messages you'd like to share sort of about the platform, its usability, its application, any sort of final words from you on what we should be thinking about here?
Certainly. I have one note on Formic in particular, and one perhaps on AI more broadly. On Formic, we are part of the Innovative Solutions testing stream. So any teams that would be interested in trying out this technology, we can go through that testing stream and get people's hands on this to start playing with in different use cases, whether that's on the engine or through an API, because all of that functionality is modular. We can carve that out one way or another. On AI more broadly, I think we need to be aware of the shifting circumstances about the AI sector in particular. We now have instances where even Canadian companies that are developing AI, they're training their models on data that they've stolen from American copyright holders, and there's litigation on that, and there's concerns around privacy and ethics and security, and ultimately who owns not just the data that's being trained on, but the data that's being provided to all of these different models. And that's not just a concern for sovereignty. I think there's a concern about just the viability of these kinds of tools for systems that interact with the Canadian public. When we know that something like ChatGPT or Claude, when they're trained on mostly American data from the internet, is providing a 97% default bias towards US information and US institutions instead of Canadian sources and Canadian material. There's only so much that prompt engineering or guardrails can do without raising those kinds of concerns. And when we're talking about not just AI systems that are being integrated in government environments, but that do interact with regular everyday people and the services that they're trying to access or the rights that they're trying to protect, I think we need to put that on a pedestal. Because the reality is, whether we're supporting Canadian innovation or just innovation in Canada, what this technology can do is exceptionally transformative if it's done right, if it's done responsibly, if it's done ethically, and if it's done securely. But all of that starts with trust. If we can't trust it and the public can't trust it, you could have the best guardrails in the world, but it's not going to get you over the line.
That's maybe a great reflection to close on. Daniel, thank you very much for joining us today and for coming and demonstrating the platform and sort of walking us through how it works and explaining the value of understanding the sources of our information and the tools that we can use to access it. Really appreciate your taking the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, John. Happy to do it.